Dear spectators, welcome one and all. Thank you for joining me on a journey into one of the driest cybersecurity topics there is, implementing a secure configuration baseline on a more obscure platform. Yet again, I'm presenting at an AppSec conference a topic that has nothing to do with AppSec. But don't be worried. The Red Hat and the baseline lessons that I have learned are applicable to you in your DevOps pipeline that needs to be secured anyway. And you can also roll it on your Docker, Kubernetes, cloud, and everything else. Oh, main thing doesn't work at all. Well, it's 2 p.m. on Friday. The food coma has officially settled in. But look at you guys, choosing to be here for cybersecurity's driest hour. Truly, you are the unsung gladiators and heroes of this conference. While the masses rush to the latest AI LLM show or strategize the fastest airport exit, you alone stride willingly into the compliance Colosseum. No fame, just great. If anyone here starts hallucinating about LLMs, don't worry. A compliance checklist makes a fantastic fan and doubles as a pillow. Honestly, thank you for being here and to learn about system hardening, compliance scans, the hottest topic in security since, well, anything else. If anybody dozes off, you have my blessing. Let's get down into the nitty-gritty, right? So every single parchment and scroll, and by the way, I think I'm the only presentation that has adopted the theme of the conference of Gladiator, which was really, I don't know. I did the same with zombies last time. So if you unroll the parchment of any cybersecurity compliance, everybody will call for, you need to have a baseline. A secure baseline must be present. Now, everybody, of course, gets compliance pass. Let's not forget that every single retailer that got breached on credit card was PCI compliant. But in reality, nobody really does it, right? I'm thinking that finding an organization that actually fully adopted as a hardened baseline and implemented it across all systems with automatic validation is about as likely as having Lion enjoying his veggie plate for dinner before the Colosseum fight, or maybe as likely as Caesar himself having to pay the entrance fee to the Colosseum. If there is an organization that you guys work for that you have adopted and have secure baseline across the board, please talk to me. You'll be the true compliance deity. Now, you may be asking why are we in this state, right? Like, why is it so hard? And if you think about it, every single vendor that develops software, whether it's operating system, your cloud products, or whatever else, they want it to work, right? You just install that, everything works, you can test it out, and if you like it, you are going to secure it in the future, right? They are pushed by MVPs, minimal viable product, first to market, so who has time to do all of these things? They just roll out the code, everything needs to work. Now, the security after you deploy, the hardening that will happen, I really think that's about as likely as having a Roman legion soldier submitting a work-life request to his lieutenant. And seriously, if you believe that the hardening will happen, I have a bridge in Rome to sell you. So you will end up with a system that's out-of-the-box vulnerable. And I actually have a real-world story. And I'm curious to kind of take a poll in here. So imagine two scenarios. You need to install OpenShift on Red Hat server. You adopt the baseline, and you roll out a fully secured baseline Red Hat Linux. The installer, a system integrator from OpenShift comes. They run their script, and it doesn't work. Now, at this point, I'm definitely on the side of if you take a few extra hours, because it's already secured and doesn't work, you can easily turn on auditing and figure out why doesn't it work. Maybe there is a specific permission that you need to change, or relax the security just a little bit, and the system will tell you, I need this and I cannot do it. So the installer will spend more time, and maybe that's the billable hours they will be charging you. But in the end, you will have a fully functional and secure baseline for the environment. On the other side is, if this is the case, the request from the installer may be, can you give me the default build? I cannot work with this secure baseline. And who here would choose and insist on the first option? Like, here's the secure baseline, figure it out. Nobody, right? So everybody else would choose, let's just roll with the default, get the OpenChief people out of the door. We have a system that works. We can move on, and sure, we'll secure it later. And I think that's the reason why the compliance check marks really doesn't do much for you. So if you wanted to embark on this journey, I have selected CIS benchmark because it's industry standard. They are well recognized. You want to have a baseline that is not, well, Petr says we should do, which should be the CIS says, with a bunch of experts behind that, you shall do. And it's really great. CIS benchmarks are a great product. We have to understand they are built for a generic organization. So that will not be your specific organization with your specific business processes. It will not maybe work with some legacy applications and systems that you still have. And you need to tweak it. And here comes the sucky part. So for Red Hat Linux 8, there are 230 line items that you have to kind of walk through. And when you hear that and you look at it, you're just like, yeah, next time. I'll get to it soon, right? But if you take the time to go through this, you simply, if you are a paying member of CIS, you can get the Excel file for the benchmark. And you can simply, for each of the settings, say, yes, I'm going to accept what the benchmark says because I don't see any problem with it. I don't think it will break anything. You can also define your own specific things. So for example, an account lockout, the CIS benchmark may say you should do it after 10 failed logon attempts. And maybe you have regulatory framework that tells you you need to do it after 3. So obviously, your internal standards and policies will take precedence over the generic CIS benchmark. And there may be some that you simply cannot do because they are maybe too difficult, or it would take ripping and replacing legacy application that runs. And that's all fine. Now, if you just take the Excel file and go through it, all 230 line items, and you explain why you're doing it, what you're accepting or not, shouldn't it be enough? Are you compliant? Because the framework says you must have a documented secure baseline. I have the Excel file. I have the baseline. I'm compliant. And I think that's really, again, what's behind that. So that you know how it looks a little bit, this is from CIS Workbench. That's the Red Hat 8 benchmark. It's grouped by different categories, and you can kind of go through it, again, line by line. And it actually looks like this for the final product. Now, this is sample for the justification. That is some AI-generated humor. I would recommend you actually use proper justification. And you don't necessarily need to justify why you're accepting it, right? You accept whatever it says. But if you're going to reject that or define your own, you should have something to point to, because the auditor that can come may be asking you why you're deviating from the baseline and from the best practices. So now that you have the benchmark defined and you know what to do, it's time to do it. And enforcing the desired state, you definitely need to use some tools in here. Ansible comes to mind, Puppet, Chef, anything is infrastructure as a code. You can run scripts if you want. It doesn't really matter how you do it. But be careful, because you are hardening systems in production. And so CIS, you can go with benchmark level 1, which is listed as a prudent security thing that will meaningfully improve security and has minimal chance of breaking something. It's not true. There are some legacy applications that simply will not work even on the level 1 benchmark. So definitely rely on your change management processes and validation. Go slowly. As you roll it out, if something breaks, then you are at the same 2 choices that I asked you before, right? If it breaks, turn on auditing and logging, figure out why does it break, like what specifically is needed. This is kind of like, in the Windows XP time, everybody and every application was written to run as admin, because everybody had a local admin. But when Vista came with the UAC, and you may remember the Mac versus PC prompts, and you have to answer everything. Oftentimes, like, people still needed to run the local admin, but there may have been one simple privilege or permission that need to be tweaked, and you don't have to run as that. So maybe there is some legacy application like that, and you may not be able to fix it. And if you really cannot do it, then it's fine. You just put it on the define or deny list that you cannot address that right now. You will need, of course, independent validation. Sorry, skip ahead a little bit. Because even if you have automation in place, do you know that the automation actually works? Right? You need to validate that the settings that you're expecting are actually in place. So you can ask the sharp-eyed eagle over here. By the way, I'm not this good at graphical design. This is all ChatGPT prompting. So let's turn into the Gladiator story. We have our hero of this story is Complicus Maximus. He's a compliance gladiator. I definitely was aiming for a Latin-sounding name with compliance. The Complicus sounds more like complicated. It's probably maybe better fitting. Mm-hmm. What was that?
Sorry, we're making jokes.
No, yeah, say it out loud, please. If you want. So he is tasked by the Internal Auditor Caesar Augustus to go and secure the Red Hat baseline platform. He got some good wins on the Windows Server baseline. I actually presented about it here last year. And this Gladiator is wanting to seek some sage advice. So he finds sage use configurers who tells him there are some CIS codices that can make it really easy to do and implement. There are 230 of these. And our hero, Complicus, is quickly realizing, that this is not a way to do it. Like, there needs to be something else. I cannot simply go and tackle 230 line items across the entire Red Hat baseline. So he's trying to think, maybe I just go into the arena unarmed, trusting that wit is sharper than any steel, and just roll with it. But then he realizes, maybe I can seek help from my own internal system administrators who may be managing this. So he will go and talk to the admin's senate. Now, as fate has it, Complicus happens to deal with mostly Windows system administrators who are puzzled at the Red Hat Linux baseline. And you can see that, the close ally is Scriptus PowerShells, because PowerShell does run on Red Hat. And you could use it. The Adminicus Maximus is casting serious doubt on this because group policy objects will not work on Red Hat. And Consul Group Policy Ultimus definitely agrees. There is also Configurer Systemus who is thinking, hey, I can use SCCM and secure the platform. Unfortunately, Microsoft SCCM does not work on Red Hat. The one person, there is always the person on the team that finds an excuse why not to do anything. So that's Excusus Excelsior. And he actually has a pretty good idea that says, if I do not know where I start with hardening, could I take a pulse and sample of all my systems, get the results back, and look, are any of the settings already compliant with the benchmark? Because if there are 230, you are bound to be lucky at least somewhat and get some of these settings already. So you can say, this is in place already. I'm going to accept that because it lines up with the benchmark. And there you go. You have an initial baseline. And maybe that's 30%, maybe 40, maybe more. But that's a pretty good win. So how do you get the results from all the servers, right, to kind of do this sort of thing? So our hero is looking for some ideas and advice, and he runs into Vulnerabilicus, the prophet, who is whispering glory of magic artifacts, Tenabilis, Imperabilis. This may be a play on a vendor in this space, in threat and vulnerability management. And he's saying, if you get these magic artifacts, this will be really easy and you can do it. Just, get these and all your problems are solved. So Complicus thinks this is actually a pretty good side quest. And as he starts on that, he happens to run into a shady merchant, Mark Appius Venderus, who happens to sell these artifacts. Obviously, this is for a friendly daytime robbery price, bordering on astronomical, because the tools are super expensive. And for the little they give you, I'm not sure what they are charging. What they are charging it for. So he's really excited, and he's thinking, what happened? He's thinking how it can actually be useful for the product. So this is an actual result from Tenable. It has been modified. None of the data is real, but it's inspired by real artifacts. And if you start looking at the benchmark, so you have 230 line items. They are numbered by the index. And then there's the benchmark text. So for your 1.1.1.1 benchmark, you see that everything is high risk, which, it's a compliance check. It should pass or fail. I'm not sure why Tenable is so dumb of not recognizing this. But if it is a high, it means it failed. If it is in info state, it means actually it passed. So the setting is there as it should be. And if it is in medium, then good luck figuring what's happening. It can actually be some of the checks require manual audit. You cannot simply automate it. And sometimes it means that there was an error running the scan. So if we zoom in on one of these, our favorite ensure no exit option is set on the temporary partition. This one is showing as high, so it failed. But as you see, it didn't fail consistently. So out of the 27 servers, there are 3 that have failed and 24 that have passed. But do you know if those passing are passing in the exact same way? Because sometimes the benchmark says you can have status A or B, and they are both OK and compliant. What if you have half of them in status A and the other one in status B because you don't control the configuration? That can easily happen. For the fails, the question is, did they fail consistently? And again, it doesn't seem like a difficult features to build. And for the price that you have to pay to renew Tenable, I think it's outrageous how much they are charging. So our hero Complicus realizes that COTS tools suck. And I'm known to be a harsh critic of commercial products because oftentimes they are built with pretty graphs and pictures and PDF files, and you cannot really operationalize and take action, especially at scale. So good luck shines, and Complicus gets an idea. What if I leverage the platform I already have, get the results out of it, and then use some magic, some ancient scripted runes, like Python, and simply parse the results, and then build some sort of grouping and things like that? Oh, that's actually a good idea, right? Why not? Now, you can see the code, by the way, doesn't make any sense, so don't try to necessarily. That was what ChatGPT came up with in the picture. But simply taking the output and running some simple processing on it would actually work. So let's look at the script logic. This is really high level. This is not a coding class. And there is a AppSec, actually. So the simple logic is you need to look for all the scan results, group them by the CIS benchmark. That was like the 1.1.1.1, right, something. You group them by the result, if they are passing or failing. And also you group them by what the result actually says. And this is going to create a nested dictionary. It's also known as a hash table and associative array in other languages. And then you simply shove each server into that nested array, and you get something like a JSON structure that should be maybe a little bit easier to visualize. The first setting, 11221, ensure that SHM is separate partition. in your population, all the servers passed. They passed in the same way, and these are the servers in your server population that are like that. For the setting 1111, GramFS system, you actually see that there are 3 different results. They're all failed, right? And again, simplify, doesn't say EFG or YZX. But if you build a nested object and like you index it by keys, a lot of people may be stuck with, well, can the key be super complex? Because I'm using an output from a script, from a server, that can be a bunch of gibberish and a bunch of lines, a lot of text. But the programming language doesn't care. It simply says, if this is the same output from multiple servers, put this on this one pile. And this did turn out to be actually such a brilliant idea, if I say so myself. It worked, and I was super excited because the step that Excuses Excelsior suggested is let's look at how many servers have the same setting. You will actually see when you convert this into an Excel, because JSON, you can of course parse it and get data, but it will be easier to visualize in something like Excel. This is what it looks like, right? This is pretty much the same result as we've seen on Tenable screenshot, but now it's highly actionable. What I am not showing on it is a column that has the count of the host names. So if you run against 27 servers and you just filter on the column that has the count for 27, you don't even care if it's passing or failing. You know that those servers behave this exactly same way. And in here, you can simply say the 3 fails actually are 3 different ways how they fail. Now, there is 1 or more servers in each of these failed state. And as it happens in here, it's just the different version, right? So this is kind of telling you, maybe my patch management and updating needs improving because I have 3 different versions in an enterprise managed system where all the systems should be, the baseline. They should be a lot more the same than different. So this was like a nice quick step. And then if you want to go and troubleshoot and figure out why doesn't it work, then maybe you may realize that specific setting, the servers that fail that are actually all maybe database server, or maybe it's your containerization platform. And that can kind of create a subgroup of the compliance benchmark where you can say, I approve and accept 90% across the board, but for these specific servers, we have to deviate on these settings. So in my title talk, I said the twin monster, right? And there is Red Hat 8 and Red Hat 9. There is also Red Hat 10. This is actually based on my previous year effort to build out Windows compliance baseline. I looked at the different versions. We have Windows Server 2016, 19, 22, 25 now. And I was thinking how much alike these benchmarks are, actually. And unfortunately, CIS does not give you a changelog of what has changed and improved or just been modified. They only tell you the change versioning within the same benchmark. But when they release a new version, even if it's for the same platform, you simply do not have a way to compare that. So I wrote a script that was excellent, and it actually worked great just the other day when I imported 2025 baseline, that takes the Excel file of the benchmark and looks at the benchmark IDs and compares the text. And if it's the same, then I simply build a Windows Server baseline rather than having a specific 2019, 2022, 2025. And I was hoping that this approach can be taken and applied on the Red Hat side as well, because after all, it's the same organization, right? CIS is working on these benchmarks. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. I had a problem with, I'm not sure, it must have been 2 completely different teams, perhaps at different continents or something. The teams have decided to rename most of the benchmark. So they split some into 2 checks instead of 1. They combine 2 into 1, and they modify the CS benchmark numbers. So there was really no way to programmatically easily find an overlap. and create one Red Hat baseline that can be easily modified. The overlap was actually only about like 40%. So that was rather disappointing to me, and I had to resort to some manual approach at first, and then I just gave up on Red Hat 9 because Red Hat 8 was the one that had more representation in the system. With the Red Hat 9, somebody will figure it out, I'm sure. Probably me. Did it work for us in the end, actually? Did we get the coveted? Remember, the task was by the Internal Auditor Caesar Augustus, built me a compliance benchmark. And you seem smiling, giving us thumbs up. Now, this is actually a little bit premature. We got good initial review, but official audit and validation has not happened yet. But if you think about it, you are going to have a fully documented baseline that tells you, I'm going to accept these specific settings. And I'm not going to accept these because, and there is a good reason, and maybe you tried it because as you try to apply the hardening steps, you take notes, right, and figure out, hey, this application doesn't work with this particular setting. And you can, I meant to say in here, when you hand out the baseline, right, like each of the line items will have the accept, define, or rejected, and justification. You have done the sampling of the population, and you know how all the servers are and which settings you can easily apply. And for the rest, the remaining, let's say 60%, you simply create a plan of actions and milestones, or POEM, from the compliance world. And an auditor should know you will eventually get there, and there is a plan with some timeline so they can hold you accountable in the future. Hey, how are you doing based on the timeline that you have set? Now, that doesn't end there. You need to then go and start tweaking the Nessus template scan, because eventually you will have your own baseline, and the baseline will be different from what CIS says. So all the tools like Tenable and Rapid7, they come with a built-in CS benchmark included, but they give you very little options to customize that. You can change like the logon banner, that's pretty easy to do, and maybe 5 other settings, but out of the 200, you pretty much need to go get into the nitty-gritty and start digging through the crazy audit file. But the cool thing is when you start modifying that, and that's something I did, is you can put in the expected keyword. So each of our line items on the scan result has the word ACC, define, or rejected. And that quickly tells you if something is failing in the scan results, but it's been rejected, then you don't have to spend time on figuring out what has happened, right? Now, I also added the justification, and I anchored it with 2 specific tags so that when I get the output, and this is another thing, like so Tenable, even today, I think I looked last week, they do not support exporting into some easy to read structured format like JSON. You have a CSV and then the Nessus format, which is an XML. It is structured, but it's just so super complex that a lot of parsers that you use to rip through the XML structure get confused. And the CSV file, again, you have multiple line output with special characters all in a CSV, and sometimes you see a mixture of quotes, and as I've seen, it actually, when you try to open it in Excel, it misreads what the rows are, and so you cannot even easily filter and group. So I had to build my own parser as well for the scan results, and some of the scan results come with 5 different title keywords, and some only 3, and some have 6. So to actually build logic on, where these are and what the order is, and extract the text from that, it was really painful. And I'm just like, simply exporting into JSON is not difficult. And I talked to Tenable people in the past, and they're like, yeah, we should be doing that. So they're not. All right, so the quick takeaways here, right? If you wanted to go and embark on this journey, again, I was thinking about using AI and LLM for sure on the walkthrough, right? If there's 230 line items, I sure will not be doing it by hand. But if you think about it, your AI and LLM models will not have the knowledge of your business processes and your legacy applications. Or hopefully they don't, right? maybe somebody already uploaded it. But you can maybe ask some generic advice, like out of these 200 settings, how many of these are likely to cause minimal impact on the behavior of the system? And maybe that is your first batch that you start with. And then the other ones can be, that are more concerning, and then you have to roll them through the change management. Document the reason for deviation, because again, each of the benchmark or the compliance framework calls for a documented baseline. And this is not something I heard from specific system administrators. This is not your golden image that you deploy the servers out of, right? That baseline should be outside of the operating system so that you have some independent document, preferably held by the compliance department as the standard, so that IT, when we run a scan and validate if something is different, we can look at the policy and we know that the policy is right. To get started again, if you don't really know where to go, just pull the results and group them how I showed you. You would really be surprised how helpful it has been. And that information can be easily shared with the system administrators. And unlike the Tenable GUI, where you can get the same information, obviously, but you have to click 5 or 6 times just to get to the result, and that's for one specific CS benchmark ID for a specific server. So multiply that by 27 for all 27 servers, and multiply it by 230 for all those line items in the baseline, and you get to quickly realize it's really just painful, right? And that's what I meant by when I say most commercial tools give you nice dashboards that I find completely useless because they are not actionable. So I'm always looking for the data set behind it, so I can maybe take it and put it in some large language model or generically a model that can maybe help me analyze the data. Obviously, I would recommend that you split this in batches, because again, there is a lot to change at once. And whoever did troubleshooting in IT, you know that you should change one thing at a time. Now, you probably want to group these a little bit so you can, go through it a little bit faster. But definitely start in your non-production environments, because you don't want to start on the bad note and take down production. And for whatever you cannot do, again, don't be shy to say we simply will not do it or we are doing it our way. And the reason is, and then have a good reason. That really, I believe that should give you a thumbs up from any compliance auditor, and you are well on your way of building actually a secure and baseline for the platform that you will have in the end. So that's pretty much it. Are there any questions? Not everybody at once. All right. Well, if there are no questions, then thank you for attending. And